There's something about the internet that just wants to create villains where there don't need to be villains. I talked about a couple of days ago about how Peter Levels created this airplane game, and he apparently is making like over $50,000 this month off of the fun little vibe coded airplane game, and like lots of people are real mad about that. Um, and I think that there's a lot of different areas where we can start talking about this. But one of the things that I do want to kind of defend, because I was somebody who was very, very against vibe coding in the beginning, I want to defend it now. And I want to say that like I've kind of changed my mind on it a lot, especially as LLMs have gotten a lot better at coding. So I use Claude within Cursor a fair bit, not like a ton, but a fair bit within my code. I have basically since like even before I was against vibe coding, I was using Cursor a bit. Um, I don't use it a ton. It doesn't write like the majority of my code, but I do use it a bit. And vibe coding became a thing. I think it was based off of a tweet from Andre something. Um, Basically a big LLM researcher. Andre, let's see, Karpathy. Andre Karpathy. Not going to try to screw up that guy's name. He's awesome. He put out a tweet basically saying like he spends a fair bit of time just letting LLM generate all of the code. And they create really, really cool, like small pieces of software, games, visualizations, things like that. And he just basically prompts his way into something that runs and does cool things. And he called it vibe coding. And he made some statements about essentially, this is going to be kind of the future of development, how we were going to speak to an IDE more than we were going to code. I'm not sold on that entirely, but he kind of created a thing that people got really, really mad about. And when people get really, really mad about a thing, I feel like I've got to look into it more because generally speaking, there's some assumptions and there are some kind of philosophical beliefs that underpin that anger that can kind of be interesting. So I at first was very much against vibe coding. Vibe coding being just kind of letting the LLM write like 90% of your code. I was against it because I did not really have a great experience with LLM generated code. A lot of it was very buggy. I was writing a lot of Rust at the time, and LLMs still are not very good at Rust. I hear that they're not very good at C or C++ either. But point being is that I didn't have a great experience with it, so I kind of thought most LLM generated code is going to be bad. Then 3.7 came out, Sonnet 3.7. And Sonnet 3.7 writes significantly better code than 3.5 does. And it writes it much more logically, and Cursor's basically ability to interface with 3.7 using like its composer mode, really, really good. Writes fantastic code. You just kind of have to know how to prompt it correctly. And I kind of started playing around with a little bit of vibe coding. I didn't create a whole project the way that Peter Levels did, and I haven't created projects the way a lot of other people who are creating like video games have. But I did start playing around with it to kind of see what the potential there is. It's good. It is not capable of creating an entire SaaS on its own, in my opinion. I think that Peter benefits a lot from the fact that he had a huge following and he can basically print money with it. That's not the reason why he's successful, but it is an after effect of him being successful. I think if anybody else created that plane game, they would be sitting at $0 MRR and people would be laughing at them. But Peter can print money because he's built a loyal following. And that's an awesome idea. You should definitely build a loyal following of people who are willing to throw money at you. Duh. I don't think that anything Peter did was a scam, by the way, but he vibe coded his way into a project that people wanted to pay for. It was a $30 payment that they could toss at him and get a cool jet. Or they could toss a couple $1,000s at him and they could get an advertisement in front of thousands of people who might be interested in that advertisement. Not going to really comment too much on that. Honestly, people are creating a lot of really cool stuff with vibe coding. And I personally think that we should start viewing it very similarly to how we view AI created art. And people are really, really pissy about AI created art as well. But the idea that I have is like, let's not view it the exact same as computer science. Let's not view it the exact same as engineering SaaS. Let's view it as its own separate thing. Let's view it as, okay, the LLM generated 90% of this code base and it created this cool thing. An LLM generated 100% of this piece of art or 90% of this piece of art and it's this cool thing. We can have everything in its separate silos and we can call them what they are. There is a middle point where those definitions start to get melded, or where people frankly don't care. Most people playing the little plane game don't really care all that much that it was 100% or 90% LLM generated. Most people that are looking at AI art, if they're not told immediately that it's AI art, they're going to look at it and be like, that's a cool piece of art. That's about it. They're not going to really view it any differently from any other piece of art or any other piece of SaaS. So there is a point in the middle where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that much if it was AI generated mostly. It doesn't really matter. There's that aspect within art. There's that aspect within vibe coded projects. I understand that there are some areas where people are a little prickly about it. I am in cybersecurity. I am personally terrified of what's going to happen when people start throwing slop code that is 100% LLM generated at a web server and expect it to keep people secure. Not going to, more than likely. But then again, human beings create slop code without LLMs, and it has tons of security problems. I mean, look at WordPress. It is an entire pile of vulnerabilities. That's basically all WordPress is at this point, and litigation. So I understand that there's some security problems. There's some privacy problems. I understand that there is a lot of value in understanding the craft. I understand that people are not going to be able to really update and keep up with a code base that is entirely generated by something that's not them. There are problems with this. And I'm not trying to say that there are no problems with this. I'm not trying to say that we need to just accelerate into the future of vibe coding and not paying attention to any line of code that the LLM writes, just ship it and let it go. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to kind of chill out, cool the brakes a little bit, maybe have a nice iced coffee if it's warm where you're at, or a hot coffee if it's cold. Just kind of chill out a little bit and approach this on a project by project basis. Does it matter if Peter Levels releases a plain game that was entirely LLM generated? No. Does it matter if projects that have access to a lot of your personally identifiable information are entirely LLM generated? Yeah. I'm going to ask that those things be reviewed by a human before I give you all of my information and my credit card details. I really don't want Stripe to start deploying a bunch of vibe coded stuff to their infrastructure handling all of my payment card information. That's not going to happen more than likely in the future, or at least in the near future, I hope. Fingers crossed. But what I think we should do is approach this from a project by project basis and not just completely throw out vibe coding as an idea, and not just completely embrace it either. We need to embrace all of these things as pieces of tools and approaches that we can apply in meaningful ways and in bad ways. And we need to kind of control ourselves the way that we kind of do that. Well, that's an 8-minute long ramble. I don't really have a ton more to add. I'm going to be doing some vibe coded projects in the future. I'll probably label them as such just because I think that's probably the intellectually honest thing to do. But I'll kind of keep folks updated on that. I think the vibe coding discussion is an interesting one. I think it's going to be a really cool one to see going on in the future. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to participate in it and get really, really angry and get their feelings hurt. And that's silly. I've seen a lot of it already. I think the ad hominem attacks against people who make silly playing games is kind of dumb and a waste of time. And I think a lot of these discussions are coming from people who haven't ever built anything. So who cares if an LLM built something? You haven't built anything yourself. So whatever. Yeah, that's about it, I guess. Take it easy. Peace.